The ERP software space has been around for several decades now, but it's headed into some uncharted territories right now. That's what I want to talk about here today. My name is Eric Kimberling. I'm the CEO of Third Stage Consulting. We're an independent consulting firm that helps clients throughout the world reach the third stage of their digital transformation success. And the ERP software space has been around for a long time. It's a pretty mature industry, and it's evolved over time. It's changed over time. It's built on past successes over time. But the ERP software industry is also going through some fundamental changes right now. The trends and shifts in the industry we're seeing are fundamental, and it's something you should understand as you consider your different ERP software options. So what I want to do today is talk about the 5 trends that are most relevant to you as you navigate the ERP software industry of the 2020s and beyond. The first trend we're seeing is something that's a weakness today, but in the future it should be a strength, and that is the level of maturity we're seeing in cloud solutions. So a lot of ERP systems originated in on-premise situations, and they're now trying to migrate all that functionality and all those millions and billions of dollars of R&D into the cloud. Now, as of right now, this is a weakness or a liability for ERP softwares, or at least many of the software vendors. They haven't quite made that shift yet. The products are half-baked. They're still working on scrambling to get that on-premise maturity into the cloud, and in some cases build on that maturity to add new capabilities. And the potential is there. They're going to get there, but they're not there yet. So in the future, what we're going to see is you're eventually going to see some very mature cloud solutions that the mainstream organizations throughout the world are going to adapt to, and they're no longer going to question whether or not they should remain on-premise. I think it'll become more of a no-brainer for organizations as those cloud solutions become more mature. So one thing to note is not all software vendors are in the same place on the maturity scale. So you really want to understand where your software vendor is or your preferred software vendor is before you make a decision. For example, NetSuite is further along than organizations like SAP. So you're going to find that there's disparity in terms of the level of maturity, but in general, in a few years from now, we're going to see that the cloud solutions are mature enough to rival the on-premise functionality that companies are used to. One thing we're seeing in the ERP software space is that more and more software vendors are becoming less concerned with trying to be everything to everyone and provide functionality that does everything that an organization might need, and instead provide more of a central hub or more of a platform for how their organizations are run and how their technology integrates across the enterprise. So you're finding that more and more organizations and software vendors are moving to this model of providing a platform and an ecosystem that others can bolt onto. So instead of providing a single solution that does everything, they're creating a platform and an ecosystem that others can build on. A great example of this is the Force.com platform, which is a platform developed by Salesforce. So Salesforce is a CRM system. They don't do full-blown ERP, and there's a lot of things Salesforce cannot do, but they've done a good job of creating this ecosystem or this platform of the Force platform that other third-party developers can create other solutions or niche solutions that meet all the different needs of different organizations throughout the world. And the beauty of this is you have a standard set of APIs and integration points and ways the software can be deployed that can give you a lot of options in the marketplace. So one thing to watch for is for software vendors to move more and more towards this platform as a service model. Despite the fact that there's a seismic shift toward the cloud in the ERP software space, there is going to be a day in the future, I don't know when, I don't know how many years out this is, but there is going to be a reckoning, a day of reckoning where organizations realize and recognize that their cloud solutions are costing them a lot of money. And it's a lot like leasing a car. If you lease a car, you may love your car, it's a great new car, it's shiny and new, but that payment never goes away and you never own that car. So unless you decide to buy a car, you're always going to have an ongoing payment. And that's the dynamic that I think a lot of organizations haven't yet realized or caught up to, is when you look 5, 7, 10 years down the road of using a cloud system and that payment, that annual subscription cost that never goes away, you're going to eventually find that you're spending more money than you thought, and maybe even more than you had spent on your on-premise solutions. So that's not to say that people are going to abandon the cloud, but I do think there's going to be a day of reckoning where people say, hey, we're overspending on our technology. Let's throttle back the contract we have with our software provider. Now, of course, that's going to put more pressure on software vendors to ensure that they're delivering value that justifies that higher cost. Whether or not they can or do is the million-dollar question. But in general, I think you're going to see severe pressure on cloud providers to drop the prices and ensure that those long-term costs don't spiral out of control for organizations, because if they do, they will end up being in a world of hurt as their customers end up migrating to other lower cost options. One of the philosophical battles that I don't think will ever get resolved in the ERP space is whether you should be looking for a single ERP system or whether you should be looking at best-of-breed point solutions. This is often referred to as composable ERP. So in other words, instead of finding one system that does everything you need within an entire enterprise, you're looking for the best CRM system, the best financial system, the best warehouse management system, the best supply chain solution, the best HR or HCM system. You're finding the right solution, whether or not it's from the same vendor, to meet the needs of your business. And the reason I think this is so important is because as the big software vendors consolidate, and they do try to be everything to everyone, it's constantly going to create a vacuum of opportunity for upstart competitors that focus on specific niches within ERP. So good historical examples of this would be Salesforce, which I mentioned before. Salesforce burst onto the scene as a CRM solution that did CRM better than most ERP systems. You also have Workday that did the same thing on the financial and HCM side. So they came onto the scene really starting as an HCM solution that did human capital management better than most ERP systems, and they eventually broadened their purview to include financials as well. So these are just two examples of a trend that's been developing for some time, but a trend that really won't go away. I think this trend will just continue to accelerate. The pendulum or the debate between single ERP versus best of breed, that debate will never get resolved, much like political arguments or other sorts of debates in the world that never get resolved. I think this is one that won't ever get settled. So the key here is to recognize you have options, and you're probably going to continue to have lots of different options in the marketplace going forward, which is good news for buyers. If history has taught us anything in the ERP software space, it's that the software vendors that are dominating today are not likely to be dominating in the future. When I first started my career, believe it or not, Bond was still a pretty common software system. I remember when I was going to grad school and business school, I took a computer science course, and the professor talked about Bond all the time and how great Bond was. And at the time, it was the #1 ERP system in the marketplace. Today, very few organizations are buying Bond. I don't even know if you can buy Bond, to be honest. There's still organizations using it, but Bond is clearly not the market leader in the way it was. SAP is now the market leader, especially with larger organizations. So the question becomes, will SAP still be the leader in 5, 10, 20 years from now? I don't know. But if we look at other trends in the marketplace, like the one I mentioned before with best-of-breed providers like Workday and Salesforce, they're proving that they can take big chunks of market share from the incumbent ERP providers. So Workday, for example, is taking market share from Oracle, from Infor, in some cases from SAP and other software vendors in the marketplace. So it's highly likely that in the next few years, you're going to see a reshuffle of the top ERP systems, which is why it's more important than ever just to focus on what software vendor seems to have the best roadmap and best fits your functionality and needs based on what you know today. It may not be the biggest software vendor in the world. It could be an upstart competitor, but there's a high likelihood that some of these newer software vendors are going to be the dominant players in years to come. So these are the 5 biggest trends that I would keep in mind as you try to navigate the ERP software industry today and in the future. And for more information and best practices and trends for your digital transformation or things to consider as part of your digital transformation, I encourage you to download our annual digital transformation report, which covers these sorts of trends, best practices, independent software reviews and rankings of different vendors in the marketplace. And this tool set and this knowledge should be able to help you through your transformation. I've also included a number of other resources below in the description, so be sure to check those out as well. So I hope you found this information useful and hope you have a great day.